Sergio's restaurant was located in the heart of the city, a traditional place frequented by important people and loyal customers who always returned for the impeccable food and sophisticated atmosphere. He ran the place with a firm hand, guarding the reputation he had built over the years. Nothing upset him more than anything that could damage his establishment's image. That's why, that night, as soon as he heard the commotion coming from the neighboring restaurant, he felt his blood boil. He already didn't like that place, a recent competitor that catered to a young and noisy crowd, something that went against everything he valued. But upon learning the reason for the agitation, his mood worsened even further. Vinicius Jr., the Brazilian national team star and world-famous player, was dining there. "What is that kid doing here?" Sergio grumbled, clenching his fists as he watched the movement through his office window. The neighboring restaurant's waiters rushed to serve the player and his entourage. Customers stood up with their phones to take pictures, and even some people from the street began to gather on the sidewalk. The presence of a football star had turned the place into a spectacle. Sergio scoffed. It wasn't just about business rivalry. He had always looked down on those types of people who brought more noise than anything else. To him, restaurants were temples of fine dining and tranquility, not places for celebrities to attract crowds and turn the dining experience into a show. The unease inside him grew. With every loud laugh coming from next door, with every camera flash lighting up the street, he felt as if the respect for his own establishment was being eroded. He walked to the dining area and noticed that some of his own customers were distracted, peeking over at the commotion next door. A whole table of young people who had been enjoying their meals was now whispering excitedly, speculating about the player's presence. "This can't go on like this," he muttered to himself, returning to his office and shutting the door firmly. He stayed there for a few minutes, trying to focus on the flow of the night, but the irritation wouldn't leave him alone. He kept checking the clock, waiting for the moment when that circus would end, but Vinicius and his friends seemed in no hurry to leave. Then he had an idea. A simple idea, but one that could bring him a small personal sense of revenge. Nothing too big, just something subtle, something that wouldn't attract too much attention or get him into trouble. Just an inconvenience, a problem that would make the player's grand exit a little less triumphant. He got up, grabbed a jacket, and quietly slipped out the back door. He walked toward the parking lot, where a row of luxury cars was parked. It wasn't hard to identify Vinicius Jr.'s, a sleek black sports car gleaming under the streetlights. He glanced around to make sure no one was watching. Then, with a pocket knife he always carried, he crouched down beside the vehicle and, with a quick motion, punctured one of the rear tires. The air hissed out in a muffled sound, and Sergio felt a cruel satisfaction rise within him. It wasn't much, just enough to cause a little trouble. He stood up and walked back to his restaurant, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Now, all he had to do was wait. Sergio returned to his restaurant with his heart racing but a discreet smile on his lips. He sat in his office and tried to focus on the paperwork, but he couldn't shake the anticipation of seeing his plan unfold. Out in the dining area, customers were still talking about Vinicius Jr.'s presence next door. The buzz seemed endless, as if the player's simple presence was more important than anything else happening inside. Sergio glanced at his waiters, annoyed to see that even they were distracted. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the scene at the neighboring restaurant began to shift. Sergio peeked through the window and saw Vinicius and his entourage getting up, greeting staff, and taking a few last-minute photos with persistent fans before heading to the parking lot. He discreetly stepped into the dining area, crossing his arms as he pretended not to pay attention. He wanted to see it all play out naturally. Outside, Vinicius Jr. walked with the relaxed posture of someone who had just enjoyed a great evening. He seemed in a good mood, laughing at something a friend had said. But then, as he approached his car, he stopped. He looked at the vehicle with a puzzled expression and frowned. "What the hell is this?" Sergio held back a smirk. Vinicius crouched down and saw the completely deflated tire. He touched the rubber, then looked up, already starting to suspect something. "Oh no," one of his friends muttered. "Someone slashed your tire, bro." The player scoffed, standing up quickly and looking around. His confusion turned into anger within seconds. "Are you kidding me? Here?" He kicked the ground, clearly furious. More people began to notice what was happening. The excitement, which had once been about seeing a football star, was now shifting into tension. "Did anyone see who did this?" he asked, scanning the area. His voice was loud enough that even some customers inside Sergio's restaurant could hear. The staff from the neighboring restaurant stepped outside to check on the situation. Their manager approached the player, trying to calm him down. "Relax, Vinicius. We'll sort this out. It was probably just some idiot." But the player wasn't in the mood to be calmed down. "What do you mean, man? This is some bullshit. Who does something like this? This is envy. This is pure jealousy." He gestured wildly, his frustration evident in every word. Sergio watched everything from inside his restaurant, still with his arms crossed, satisfied with how things were playing out. But Vinicius wasn't done. "It's always the same thing. Everywhere I go, someone wants to mess with me. You think this is normal? If I were some foreigner, nobody would touch my car, but since it's me, they pull this crap." With every word, his tone got louder. Some people on the street stopped to watch, while others tried to move away to avoid getting caught up in the situation. The tension in the air was thick, as if things could escalate at any moment. "Call someone to fix this shit," Vinicius shouted to one of his friends, who quickly pulled out his phone. Sergio realized that things were spiraling beyond what he had expected. He had wanted to annoy the player, but he hadn't thought the scene would turn into a full-blown spectacle. Some onlookers had already started recording with their phones. One of the waiters from the neighboring restaurant tried to intervene. "Vinny, calm down, man. This will be fixed in no time." But Vinicius wasn't listening. He glanced around furiously, pointing toward the restaurants. "This happened because of this shitty place, I bet. They think they're better than everyone else." Sergio felt a chill run down his spine. He hadn't expected the player's anger to take this turn. What was supposed to be a minor inconvenience was turning into a full-blown scandal. Inside the restaurant, some customers were whispering among themselves. Some looked annoyed by the shouting outside, while others simply watched in curiosity. What Sergio didn't know was that someone inside his own restaurant was already recording the scene, capturing the moment Vinicius, completely enraged, cursed and kicked the curb, visibly frustrated with the situation. And it was far from over. The atmosphere on the street was tense. Vinicius Jr. paced back and forth, kicking small stones on the sidewalk and gesturing furiously. His friends tried to calm him down, but he was already consumed by anger. The problem wasn't just the slashed tire. It was the accumulation of similar situations, the little provocations, the judgmental looks, the people constantly trying to disrespect him for no reason. "I'm so tired of this, man," he muttered, crossing his arms. "There's always someone trying to make trouble." Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, Sergio started to feel the unintended consequences of his actions. At first, it had been amusing to watch the player lose his patience over the tire. But now, seeing the commotion escalating, he realized he might have gone too far. Customers inside his restaurant were glancing outside and whispering among themselves. Some seemed annoyed, others just curious. But the worst part was the phones. Several people were clearly recording, and Sergio knew what that meant. If things escalated just a little more, the incident would be all over social media the next day. Outside, Vinicius suddenly stopped and pointed toward the restaurants. "I guarantee it was someone from here," he said, looking between the two establishments. An uncomfortable silence fell over the street. The manager from the neighboring restaurant tried to intervene. "Look, man, we don't know who did this." "Oh, you don't know? That's too much of a coincidence, isn't it?" Vinicius snapped back. He glanced at Sergio's restaurant with a sharp, suspicious look. Sergio swallowed hard. For a moment, he thought the player might storm in and cause a scene. But before that could happen, one of Vinicius's friends pointed at a car pulling up at the end of the street. "The tow truck's here. Let's just get this sorted out." The player took a deep breath, shaking his head. Still visibly irritated, he walked toward his car, but not before throwing out one final remark. "This place, you can bet I'm never coming back here." Sergio felt a small sense of relief that the player wasn't going to make an even bigger scene. But then, something made his stomach drop. People were still filming and commenting. Worse, some were already typing on their phones. likely posting about the incident in real time. Within minutes, videos and accounts of the event started spreading online. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, on every platform, there were posts about Vinicius Jr. furious at a restaurant after an act of vandalism. Some sports pages began sharing the news, and in no time, the incident became a hot topic. Someone inside Sergio's own restaurant showed a video to a waiter. "It's already going viral. People are saying it was sabotage." Sergio felt sweat forming on his forehead. This was spiraling out of his control. He had only wanted to annoy the player a little, not become the center of a controversy. By the next morning, the scandal had exploded. Headlines on sports and gossip websites plastered the story. Vinicius Jr.'s car sabotaged at a restaurant, player outraged. A racist act? Football star claims he's being targeted after attack on his car. Vini Jr. and the sabotage. Another case of unfair treatment toward the Brazilian star? The speculation intensified. On sports talk shows, commentators debated the situation. Some said it was just an isolated act of vandalism. Others suggested there was a deeper issue, a pattern of unfair treatment toward the player. On Instagram, Vinicius posted a story with a black background and a short, direct message. "Tired of this nonsense. I already know where this comes from." The post went viral. Thousands of likes, outraged comments, and messages of support flooded in. That's when things really turned south for Sergio. People began speculating that the sabotage had come from a rival. His restaurant's name appeared in a comment and quickly started circulating. In the following days, his business descended into chaos. Negative comments flooded his social media. Some called him jealous. Others hinted that the act against Vinicius had racist motivations. The phone rang constantly, but it wasn't reservations. It was angry people demanding explanations. And then came the final blow. Customers started canceling their tables. Companies that used to host events there backed out. The reputation Sergio had spent years building was crumbling before his eyes. He tried to explain himself, but it was too late. Even without direct proof against him, the internet had already judged and condemned him. A week later, his restaurant was practically empty. He looked at the tables that were once always full and felt a tightness in his chest. All of this, over a slashed tire.